Is net zero by 2050 unachievable, or is it simply being defeatist?
Climate defeatist, which is a phrase we heard in the House of Commons this week. There's a lot of talk about net zero. Callum.
Well, thank you, Martin, for the question. I think probably like many folk in the audience, as a father and as someone who thinks about the next generation, I'm deeply concerned about the impact of climate change. We see it in our own lives and we see it around the world, and we see the impact that it is having on our planet. And it is incredibly important that we take that seriously. I regard it as probably the greatest generational challenge that our generation faces as to how we respond to that. Now, part of that is responding to the challenges we see. So in my area of Oxfordshire, we had terrible flooding last year, which was unprecedented. How are we going to respond to that? How are we going to build to protect our communities and our homes from what we know is coming our way? But part of it is how do we play our part in taking responsibility for the impact that our actions have on the planet and on other communities, including much more vulnerable communities elsewhere in the world. And that's the reason that the Liberal Democrats are in favour of working hard and collectively to tackle climate change and to achieve our net zero targets.
And you want to get to net zero by 2045, not by 2050. So the question is this achievable?
We believe that we need to set out ambitious targets. That if you speak to
is it achievable?
if you speak to folk in industry, as I do regularly with many...
As a Liberal Democrat, how the do you expect to change anything in society to achieve net zero faster than the parties who actually believe in industrial policy? What's your strategy? Again, of course, if the Lib Dems, they're never going to get into government. They don't have to have an actual plan or even concepts of a plan. They just have to say, we want this thing, let's do it. Like, just live reform in yellow ties, right?
Yeah.
And because the immediate important thing about wanting to turbocharge a move to net zero is the government has to get involved. The government has to subsidise, it has to build, it has to own, it has to do the things that change the scale of the economy at speed, because the private economy will not do this. And the Lib Dems are fully like free market brained. They don't believe the government should be doing anything to incentivise this other than just deregulating.
Yeah.
But how on earth is any Lib Dem going to achieve that faster than a Labour government, which, whilst not doing enough, is at least doing some industrial policy with their like public-private GB energy partnership stuff that's pretty weak source, but it's more than nothing. And the Lib Dems' response to this is nothing, but we'll do it faster somehow. Magic beans?
Yeah, no, it's just magic beans. Have you thought about the press no carbon button?
Innovators in my constituency, they say what they need is a predictable framework and the incentives and the opportunities to work towards it, and they are up for the challenge. Many businesses and many local government authorities are actually further ahead than national government in the level of ambition. We should fall behind that, and instead of shifting and tilting the targets each time there's a bit of...
That's true. In Birmingham, we've cut down our landfill enormously by just allowing the rubbish to pile up in the streets. So we are the greenest city, really. And we are a natural wildlife habitat now for giant cough rats.
Pressure. We should actually get behind this with a solid industrial policy that supports a transition towards net zero.
So, Graham, I'm trying to work out where you stand on this debate. Because you said in 2023,
so
net zero offers an opportunity for an economic renaissance. Rolling out renewables is lowering the cost of energy. It's expensive fossil fuels, which are making everyone's energy bill so high. We are going hell for leather to increase green energy. You now describe it as madness. So which is it?
No, well, I describe it as madness.
Oh, he's got no chance. Again, he's just a lamb to the slaughter. I feel slightly bad for him because his leader doesn't know what the fuck she's doing, and he now has to come out and defend two obviously ridiculous positions.
Exactly, and especially given that the first one is just 100% obviously correct for anyone who knows what they're talking about. I mean,
that is now no longer their actual policy.
Literally, again, it's just he has no one to blame but his own parliamentary colleagues for electing Kemi Badenoch, and I guess also James Cleverly for tactically failing to get himself in the last round of the leadership election.
Oh, that's genius, honestly. Who'd have thought James Cleverly fucking up his numbers brought to the death of the Conservative Party?
But also like to make the point that I made before, in that him saying we're going hell for leather for renewable energy. Well, you're not, because otherwise that would mean doing literally anything other than neoliberalism, which is all
No,
you've done.
he meant they're going to hell dressed in leather.
True.
Which,
that's what,
fair enough, you know.
I mean, which takes me back to the Lib Dem answer before. We're saying, well, the businesses in my constituency, they're ready to go. And I'm like, that's not enough. You know some businesses is not an economic strategy for achieving a broad goal of changing the face of your economy. Yeah. That's not how that works. Again, it's just deregulating, inshallah. That's all it is.
It is Labour's policy on it. They brought forward from 2035 to 2030 the sort of clean power proposal, which as I was the person responsible for it, I can say it literally can't be done.
So it's just
And
the 5 years. Is that literally all the difference is?
That
The 5 years
is
difference?
one of the many ways. What you also have to do is marry the economics. We did transform it, because it's little known that Labour's the inheritance we had from Labour in 2010 was less than 7% of our electricity was clean energy, renewables. By the time we left power, it was nearly 50%. We'd taken homes from only 12% being properly insulated to over half.
So what are
being
you
properly
saying is
insulated.
madness
So
now,
what is
then?
madness now is that you have to...
Because even though Rishi Sunak was a shithouse, he was at least sane. So we had a policy that was vaguely sane. And now we're saying it's madness because the leader of our party is suffering from actual madness.
And because all she's doing is chasing the people who she wants to get votes from, which is Reform UK, whose position on this is also stupid. And of all of this, it's worth remembering, it's also unpopular. It's not a popular position. Even Reform UK's own voters don't really agree with their position on net stupid zero. Like, dealing with climate change, very popular. Environmentalism as a philosophy, very popular across the country, across demographics, across age groups, across voting groups, across classes. Everyone supports this stuff. It's just how you get there and what you do. And we have a full, half of our electorate supporting parties now that have no connection to that broad particular popular opinion.
Yeah, again, another example of political parties not representing the British public in any real way. Cool.
For instance, we saw the madness of Labour's policies at the moment. Yesterday encapsulated it all. We saw 250 job losses in oil and gas. Our biggest oil and gas producer is Harbour Energy. And they've sacked a quarter of their onshore workforce yesterday. And we are going to be importing oil and gas instead of producing it here because Labour say we'll have no licences in the North Sea. That is crazy. We also saw yesterday...
Why would that make a difference? That doesn't make a difference. It's the same price whether we import it or not. You can make a reasonable point in saying, well, oil and gas jobs are going away, and so people are going to lose their jobs. And that is bad, right? The response to this is, well, we're going to put industrial investment as part of a strategy to ensure that there is a just transition so we can immediately retrain these people rather than leave them on the scrap heap, right? We can make sure that no one has to suffer as a result of this transition. And of course, you could critique them for doing that, right? You could critique them for not providing a new training and a new job. But that would also be admitting that Thatcher was wrong and that industrial policy is good, which the Tories don't want to do. So their only position that they can retreat to is to keep all of the polluting oil and gas products that we don't need anymore.
Yeah. Also, it's not like that oil and gas stays here. It gets sold on the international market anyway.
Yep.
It does, like you say, it doesn't actually make any difference there.
Biggest offshore wind farm in the world, which I worked on as a minister, Hornsea 4. We had 1, 2, 3 as we built it out, led the world. Hornsea 4 under Labour, guess what? Cancelled because it's no longer viable under Labour. So they can't do renewable energy either. And also yesterday, but less reported, was the future technologies, carbon capture and storage, which is so vital to this
No,
area.
it's not. No, shut up.
Project,
Shut
which
up.
is a big store.
Pause. Carbon capture and storage, massive boondoggle, bunch of nonsense. All it is a sop to the petrochemical industry so that they can get away with doing pollution and go, well, the carbon capture will clean it up after the fact. No, fuck. It's not even that good. It doesn't even remove that much carbon. It's a giant waste of money and everybody's time, and it's only there to make fossil fuel CEOs and investors feel better about what they're doing. Shut up. I'm sick. I'm sick of hearing about carbon capture and storage. It's dumb.
Not even make themselves feel better. Give them a plausible PR strategy.
Yeah.
Because you can say, oh, no, we're not evil, horrible tyrants who like to, cover seagulls in oil every fucking Tuesday. No, they can go, oh, carbon capture. It's fine. Clean coal. Yum, yum, yum. Like, no, nonsense.
Just off the Humber. Harbour have also said they're reviewing the staffing of that because Labour have not come forward with the plans and proposals in time. So they're stymieing us on oil and gas, they're not bringing forward the renewable energy, and they're even closing down the development of the vital industries for the future. They've made a horrible mess of it, and that's why I said when we were in power that the biggest enemy to the delivery of net zero, because, like Callum, I believe it is a big generational issue, but we've got to get it right.
Really? Because your leader said it was madness. So, what is your policy exactly?
And even then, if it was such a challenge, why the fuck did your government leave us with still some of the lowest levels of renewables in Western Europe as an energy mix?
Economically as well as environmentally.
All right.
Otherwise, the rest of the world will never follow us, and our own policy will be fruitless if the rest of the world doesn't see us as a success in delivering it.
No, it won't be fruitless. We'll have cleaner air. We could have actually cleaner air and cleaner rivers, and like if we have genuine and a holistic approach to just improving our own environment. Yeah, it might not stop global warming. Might not do that. Okay, that's true. But that means we shouldn't bother. We shouldn't bother trying because China might not go along with it. Well, fuck it then. Let's just let our kids choke to death in our fucking unbreathable air in our cities. Yeah, awesome.
James, I mean, Graham mentioned it, and you're talking about wind power. Hornsey 4, which is not that far from here, they planned one of the biggest offshore wind farms, which is critical to your target of reaching net zero electricity generation by 2030. And now it's not going ahead. Surely you're now into the realms of impossibility.
Well, no, look, put it in context. We've got a strong pipeline of developments coming forward for offshore wind,
this was the biggest one.
And we're going to work with them to get that back on track. But can I just put this in context as well?
But, okay, let's understand what that actually means. That basically means they want. No, let's be very clear.
Hang on, Richard. I'm more than capable of asking the questions. Hang on. When you talk about Hornsey 4, they're saying it doesn't make economic sense. What the government so far says, we're going to work with them. Does that mean, what, giving them subsidies to get it back on track? What does that actually mean?
Also, pause
I'm not going to set out all of the discussions we'll have with them.
The discussion here is about the pullout of the Danish firm Ørsted, which is actually the state-owned energy company. The Danish firm shelves UK wind farm project over rising costs. Just trying to find out what the reason it was, whether it's stupid net stupid zero, or whether it's Labour policy or whatever it is. Hang on a minute. Council. They said the Hornsey 4 project no longer made economic sense because of soaring costs in the industry's global supply chain after it won a government contract last year. The combination of increased supply chain costs, higher interest rates, and increased execution risk meant the project was unlikely to provide value for the company. So it's nothing really to do with the government's policy, because they didn't have they didn't have control of the interest rate or the increased global supply chain costs, did they?
Yeah.
It's almost like if we had our own state-owned energy generation company, actual wind farm communism, we wouldn't need to pull out, and we could do the subsidy without economic viability because of the holistic benefits of decarbonisation. Whereas even if it only broke even, it would still be worth doing. But we're now not going to do it at all because we're relying on another government to want to make a profit from it, which they now would not be doing because of increased costs. So now it's not happening at all. Brilliant, great.
Sorry for the outbreak of electric communism there.
In due course. But
at the moment, you've got one of the biggest offshore wind farms, not far from here, and they're saying it's not going to go ahead.
And it's a company that we will work with, and it's part of a really strong pipeline of offshore wind. But the other point here is about decision-making. But the other point, well, it is happening across the country, and the really important point is about decision-making that the government controls, because we've talked about offshore wind. The other aspect is onshore wind as well. And when we came into office, there was effectively a ban on onshore wind turbines introduced by the previous government. We got rid of that as one of the first decisions we took when we got into office. That has meant that suddenly all of these onshore wind turbines can actually go ahead because they have certainty. So all that investment around the world, which was ready to come into onshore wind, can now come in. If you look at, solar panels, we've consented more solar in the last 9 months than they did in 14 years. That's enough to power 800,000 homes. This is possible if you set your mind to it. And actually, what this is about for me, it's about energy security. It's about energy independence to make sure that we don't have to depend on foreign dictators' whims. We can actually have energy security here in the UK. It's about making sure that we can bring down bills.
Wow, you don't like foreign dictators? Can you explain why you're still selling weapons to Saudi Arabia then, please?
And on top of that, Graham Stewart's response was, well, why not open up North Sea oil? And I'm like, well, because the dictators will still have control over the price. OPEC sets the price. Unless we are extracting it ourselves and selling it to ourselves at cost, which we won't be doing, it'll be private companies doing it, the cost is entirely set by what the dictators and the members of the OPEC plus states want to do in terms of dictating the oil price. It has nothing to do whether it's extracted in the North Sea or imported from elsewhere. That's completely fucking irrelevant. Also, if you want to be even more tilted, chat, I've just found out that there was also another wind farm in the North Sea which was going to be powering 1.5 million homes, which was cancelled in 2023 because it was no longer profitable. The company that did that, Vattenfall. Can you guess who owns Vattenfall, Kev? Do you want to guess? Have to take a guess?
Danish company?
It's the fucking Swedish state that owns it.
Fucking hell, Scandinavia, can you stop fucking us, please?
Also, worth pointing out, the Rosebank license that's been given out is to be drilled by Equinor, which is the oil company owned by the Norwegian
Norway.
state.
So it's literally all... Finland, join in on the gangbang? Like,
Iceland,
come on,
do you want to come? Yeah, there's plenty of space.
come on, Pharaohs, we've got holes for everyone. Let's fucking go.
And it's about making sure that we can have good jobs across the country.
bills
And when
are
you
going
have,
up.
if you have jobs,
the bills are going up.
and energy security, that is why this is so important.
Off you go.
He's forgotten
We should be
that.
under no doubt. Net stupid zero is the greatest act of financial self-harm ever imposed on this country.
No, that would be Brexit.
Yeah, saying the guy who supported Brexit.
By the two main parties. and let's be very clear what's going on here.
I promise you I didn't pre-watch, although we are both based.
When it was literally, it was so obvious though. I mean, someone already said it in this very show.
They promised us lower bills, but our bills
I do like her snark as well as her analysis.
I mean, we should have trade unionists on every fucking week.
They should.
general election are almost £300 higher. Experts say there'll be another £900 higher per household by the next general election. I've asked Ed Miliband numerous times in the Commons, when are the bills going to come down? Let me tell you why we won 44 councillors and control of Lincolnshire County Council. Because the Lincolnshire residents don't want 40,000 acres of solar panels. They don't want hundreds of ugly pylons blighting their...
Literally!
Yeah, that's why the people of Lincolnshire voted. Shut the fuck up.
Just again, just like, do you want to be able to have energy security and energy abundance to make businesses more like profitable in this country? No. We must block the pylons. No more pylons.
Oh, not just that, but like the people of Lincolnshire. Could it be that places like Boston and Skegness in Lincolnshire are some of the most deprived areas in the country? Could it be that? Could it be that Westminster has totally abandoned basically all of Lincolnshire because fuck them? That's literally like. Could it be that? No, it's clearly the wind farms or the fucking solar panels. Shut the fuck. It's because they're all fucking. They can't afford to feed their fucking families or heat their homes. You prick.
I mean, have you considered, Kevin, that the new Silicon Valley between Oxford and Cambridge is going to really help it's going to really help the industrial heartlands of this country?
No, Lincolnshire. You know what Lincolnshire needs? Another bridge, not bridge, sorry, a tunnel under the Thames. That's what it needs. What Lincolnshire needs is rubber sniffing dogs in Dover.
Their property values,
Okay, so
blighting their value, blighting their property values, blighting the countryside.
Literally, it's all it is. It's just property values.
About Hornsey 4.
Well, yeah, because homeowners are literally the only people that matter. Homeowners and pensioners, although I sort of repeat myself, if anything, there. Yeah.
Actually, they've just said we're going to pretend that we don't want to do it so that we can negotiate a higher subsidy so that they can make more money and all of us will suffer higher bills because there's a new round of auctions, contracts being bid for later this summer, and Ed Miliband has just literally opened the door and says, don't worry about the price, folks, I just want capacity. So Hornsey 4 reneged on last year's deal so they can get a better deal this year. That's what's going on.
And in terms of your
I don't think that's going to happen, right? But I don't think it's necessarily a terrible point in the abstract. I think it's bad the way he said it. But the point that if the private companies who are going to be relying on can continue just coming begging bowl in hand for government subsidy, then change their mind and come back, it shows you that the private company subsidy model is not a good one. If what you deliver is if what you want to deliver is capacity, which is true. We do want to deliver capacity. We want energy abundance, energy security. So do it. Get the fucking state to do it. Don't subsidize a private company. Get a state-owned company to do it, because then the fucking economic viability of it is completely irrelevant. You don't have to tender a contract. You just fucking do it.
Yep. But that would be wind communism.
As you call it. Is there a foreign policy to do nothing on green energy?
We should scrap net zero, and that's what we're going to do.
So that's what I'm asking. So your policy is do literally nothing to reduce carbon emissions.
The best form of carbon capture, folks, is trees. Even the green part.
I mean, I know what you mean, mate, but like there's limits to that. Like, what are you going to do? Replant ancient forests? Like, I'm down with that, but I don't think that's your plan, is it?
And just in general, like it's just, well, the whole point of climate change is that we are producing too much CO2, that the current trees we already have aren't good enough at fixing the atmosphere.
Yeah.
Doing the ecological cycle. We have to do something to either reduce the amount of carbon or increase the number of trees. And, last time I was told planting trees was communism because Jeremy Corbyn just said he was going to do it.
Yeah. It's Marxism.
So, but then again, like it's true. Like what we got, you want to? We've got farmland. We've got like solar farm. Like you're just gonna replace it all with trees?
Yep. People sort of forget, actually, Britain was very, very foresty up until about 500 years ago. And then we chopped it all down because we needed to burn shit.
Don't think that the technology for carbon capture works. Why would the government want to spend 20 to 30 billion pounds of everybody's cash?
Okay, so just to be clear, so the reform policy on climate change, and I'm not saying this to mock you, I'm just to...
Is fuck it. We're heading towards the cliff edge. Hit the accelerator. Let's go.
Trying to be clear, is to plant more trees and that's it.
There are a variety of things you can do, but the point is, climate change.
Even reform are being laughed at now. Nice.
Climate's always changed for millions of years. It always will. Anybody that thinks you can stop the power of the sun is ridiculous. And what this is doing is...
Nobody is saying stop the power of... What the fuck are you talking about?
It's about carbon in the atmosphere. It's about the concentration of carbon in the atmosphere, you fucking idiot.
I don't think anyone's talking about stopping the power of the sun. I think generally it's about what impact can be had on man-made emissions, which are contributing to climate change.
And how much do they contribute? About 3 or 4%, Fiona, as you well know. Okay? So the rest of CO2 emissions are natural. I just asked James, when are the bills going to come down if we ever increase the renewable...
Jesus fucking Christ.
He's a literal climate denier. Climate denier.
Yeah, he's a freak.
Generating capacity. Just tell us when, James.
Well, I can tell you what keeps the bills high. It's every time you oppose putting more wind turbines onshore, every time you oppose solar panels, that keeps bills higher.
We've got the highest renewable generating capacity and the highest bills in the developed world.
Your party
no, we don't.
That keeps bills high.
No, we don't. That's just untrue.
Yeah.
We have lower renewable capacity than like basically every other Western European country. Like France managed to cap its bill increase at fucking 4%. 4% was the increase on French bills because they have an entirely renewable grid. It's entirely renewable. It's renewables and nuclear.
Briefly, because I want to bring Joe in.
Your policy is putting 5,800 jobs here in Hull and East Yorkshire at risk. 12,000.
And your policy has destroyed tens of thousands of jobs elsewhere in oil and gas.
Lower bills and energy security.
And it's not working. That's why we double the votes.
Okay.
I fucking hate Richard Tice, but again, like, of course he can bulldoze over this non-entity briefcase.
Well, exactly.
wanker.
That's what I mean. Like, the bringing out briefcase against Tice is not fair. And again, it just goes to show you the free marketplace of ideas. No, it's about who can shout more effectively.
Yeah.
Basically. And Richard Tice is way better than... I mean, look at him. He looks like defeat manifest. Look at him.
It's like the moment with Caroline Lucas and David Lammy.
Yeah,
last year.
exactly. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, he's a human Al.
Yeah.
Last week's election.
Okay.
Can we have a measured and sensible conversation for a second? Because I've got a brutal truth that I'd like to bring into the chat, which is if we stay on this path, we are looking at 1.2 billion climate refugees by 2050. That is not a warning, that is a forecast. And there's been much discussion in this debate.
And where's that forecast come from?
That forecast is from the Institute of Economics and Peace, right? And there's been a lot of discussion already about...
peace, is it? Communists? Wokeists?
People being hammered by sky-high heating and electricity bills because we are still hooked on gas. If you want stable energy, then the fastest way to do that, the one direction, is renewables and fast.
So why are the bills going up, Joe?
If I could just say...
Richard, you've got to stop interrupting, let people speak. Joe.
In terms of Labour, because other questions that have been asked today is, what are we going to do? I represent people who work in colleges. You occupy a space in the Treasury. If we want economic growth, if we want net zero, we need to be pumping money into our colleges because they will be educating the people and training the workers who will deliver net zero. And at the minute, we are not seeing anywhere near enough investment.
Woman in the white top.
Well, I understand. I understand it's her role as the UCU chair or president or GenSec, whatever it is, to be fighting for these interests. But you have to talk about privatization. You have to talk about it. You have to talk about the fact that we have allowed our entire energy system to be at the mercy of private companies and private interests. That is the singular problem here.
Man in the black T-shirt there. Just in the far... Well, actually, let's hear from both of you. The man in the glasses, smiling so charmingly, and then the man in the black T-shirt behind you.
Right. The cost to industry of energy is crippling it. It's ridiculous. And if you have a look at steel in Scunthorpe, we were told that the energy cost was the main reason behind the demise of the steelworks in Scunthorpe. And that's true to a lot of industries in this country. And I'm just worried about what the cost of this is ultimately going to be and the timescale to which...
The thing is, the first part of this is correct. The first part of this is super correct in that our high energy prices are really crippling our economy. They really, really do cripple the ability for us to be able to maintain some kind of economic output because energy underpins everything. Energy is required for literally every single sector of our economy. You need to have energy for that to work. And our energy costs are too high. He's right to say that. But to say that or sometimes there's a cost to net zero, like the expansion of renewable capacity is exactly the kind of thing that would bring bills down. Is why bills are cheaper in other countries because they use more renewables than we do. They're less reliant on international gas markets. That is literally the whole point. It's just our system, Jimmy the Giant was making this point in our chat, is like hooked on oil and gas like it's heroin. Like it's like a drug that we can't shake. And because of that, because our private sector relies on this to increase the costs to make profit, it's the private industries that are the kind of the barrier to getting the costs down and getting the energy mix more renewable to bring those costs down further. That's a big problem.
It keeps changing.
Okay.
We don't know where we are.
Man in the black t-shirt.
Yeah, I'd just like to say, if there's any doubt whatsoever as to how serious the Reform Party are as serious, you have to look at the response there on renewable energy and the climate as a whole, which is a global issue. That is how we are a developed country. We are in a position where we are a democratic society and we can have influence around the world by the decisions and choices we make. Their response is trees. Maybe it's inextricably linked to the fact that they're funded by those within oil and gas in those capitalist societies.
True.
I just want to say I've got about 6 minutes.
Honestly, this audience has been one of the most based in ages.
I mean,
They've been generally pretty good.
What's frustrating because that guy was clearly kind of pretty like young, kind of millennial type aged person, is that all of these issues are fucking settled, and we allow the discourse in this country to be controlled by fucking brain dead boomers. I'm got a clue what they're talking about. Like, I'm sorry, you can't just have people like Richard. I mean, not Richard Tice is a Gen X, not a boomer, but even so, right? He panders to boomers by going, all this newfangled stuff, let's get rid of it. And then you talk about, oh, well, the working class of this country, they don't want this. I'm like, working age people in this country vote overwhelmingly left wing. Overwhelmingly. But we have our entire discourse entirely corralled around a bunch of people who have multiple homes but happen to do like a normal job when they were growing up and who have reactionary opinions. They are the only acceptable voice in this country when we have a big, kind of large plurality of young working age people in this country who want to see social justice, and it doesn't get a mention at all whatsoever.
Indeed.
Hey there, if you enjoyed the video, make sure that you like and leave a comment. That helps the video out in the algorithm. If you subscribe and ring the bell, it'll let you know when I go live. I stream every day on YouTube and Twitch. You can also follow all of my socials down in the description. And if you want to support me in a more financial manner, there's a join button for membership to just 99p to be a member on YouTube, as well as a Patreon, and there's some merch there as well. And hopefully I'll catch you on the next video. Take care.